As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves, to be at home here on earth, under the sky, under the stars, linked with each other. Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church in Peoria. My name is the Reverend Jennifer Innis. It is my great joy to be the minister with this congregation. This month's theme is widening the circle. Last Sunday, we heard from those involved in our Unitarian Universalist prison ministry, a circle that is often neglected or forgotten in our society. Next Sunday, we enter into the paradox of tolerance and the question of limits and lines about how we relate with one another. Today we encounter one of the most transformative revelations in our world, that of Darwin's theory of evolution. In reflecting on the circles in our lives, I want to include the name of the Peoria people. This is their ancestral home, and they greeted the first European settlers and aided them. We offer our humble respect for their history and for their ongoing life. So, in that spirit of adapting and learning and responding to our environment, now today is our first Sunday for in-person worship since Christmas Eve. Remember, there was Christmas, right? There was this Christmas thing that happened. That was lovely. And there's been New Year's and Kwanzaa and everything since then. We are in the building for classes, meetings, worship. Thank you to everyone who braved the snow and the slipperiness of this morning to be here in person, and welcome to everybody who's joining us online. We continue to gather in all the ways that we are able. We also continue to mask as well. The Toward Life Church team, the board, the staff, and I are all grateful for the ongoing support of this congregation as we find the path that balances safety, emotional health, and living into the covenant of this congregation. It is wonderful to be together in the wide range of ways that we can and we do, including those retro ideas of calling and writing and all of those things too. For myself, I remain ever grateful to be with you on this adventure of the Spirit. And in reviewing Charles Darwin's life and theory, I am reminded that the transmutation of the species is not an easy thing. As a congregation, I have faith and I believe that we remain resilient because we do this together. We also practice being good stewards of this congregation. This beloved community is sustained by the time and skill and financial support of its members and friends. The offering plates are by the door as you enter and exit the sanctuary. Please leave a financial gift as you go out. Donations also are welcome online. See the link that shows up in our online feed, and as well as through contacting the congregation through our website. The stories we tell today of how we have become as people, as exploring our natural world, are stories of exploration and discovery and engagement and relying on the gifts of every creature and person that share this life together with us. We get to be part of creating and recreating our beloved community in so many ways. Thank you for your generous gifts that help make this possible today and for those who are to come. And now, I want to enter into our opening hymn, which reminds us how much our roots go down. In our hymn by Sarah Pertl, and if you are with me in the sanctuary, I invite you to rise in body or spirit, because this is the one for a moving. Let us begin.
My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go I am a wildfire pushing through the storm. My roots go down. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down. I am a willow swaying through the storm. I am a willow swaying through the storm. I am a willow swaying through the storm. My roots go down. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down. I am a mountain reaching for the sun. I am a mountain reaching for the sun. I am a mountain reaching for the sun. My roots go down. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down, down into the earth. My roots go down.
We meet on holy ground, brought into being as life encounters life, as personal histories merge into one communal story, as we take the pride and pain of our companions as separate selves become community. How desperate is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into those whose lives we meet, and their welcome into our own. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and in this place, for we meet on holy ground. I want to invite the Kudanoe family up for lighting our chalice.
Our chalice lighting is from Michael de Vernon Boblet. We are not alone. We are this flame, ancient as the stars, new as the vulnerable spark.
We are this chalice, rimmed by the spiral dance of searching. We are the light soaring, the shadow deepening, the dance between them.
We are the heirs of the tribes and their fires, the healers and their circles. We are here. We are here for ourselves. We are here for each other. And we are not alone. In this spirit we gather. It is good to be together.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of the evening, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Come, come, whoever you are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of the evening, causes no caravan of despair. Causes no caravan of despair. Causes no caravan of despair. Causes from worshiper, lover of the evening, causes no caravan of despair. Causes no caravan of despair. Causes no caravan of Come yet again, come.
Good morning. Our tale of evolution for today is called Ozzie and the Snortlefish by Denny O'Neil. Once upon a very, very long time ago, 438 million years ago, more or less, there lived an ambitious fish named Ozzie. Ozzie did pretty much what his brothers, sisters, and cousins did, which was to putter around the bottom of a pond, looking at the sand and dirt, waving his fins, and trying to keep from being eaten by larger fish. That's what fish did in those days, and in these days too. One morning, Ozzie was skimming along the ooze at the bottom of the pond when he met a snortlefish named Comfrumple. Comfrumple had no friends because he was an extremely rude fish, as well as being lazy, ill-tempered, and occasionally gassy. But if he had had friends, we called him Cump for short, and so shall we. Cump opened one eye, looked at Ozzie, and said, "Hey, stupid, you think you're better than me, right?" Ozzie replied, "I beg your pardon?" "Those things growing out of your body," Cump said, waving a very flat fin in Ozzie's direction. "The rest of us fish don't have those, so you must think you're better than me." Ozzie looked down at two stout appendages which jutted from his flanks. "Oh, these," he said. "You're wrong when you say I'm the only one who has them. Actually, a lot of my relatives are growing them too." "What are they good for?" Cump asked. "I've been wondering that myself," Ozzie answered. "Mostly I use them to help guide myself around the pond. I also rub them in the dirt and sand, which can be fun, but mostly I just use them to push and pull." "Sounds dumb to me," Cump said. "But last night I had a dream," Ozzie continued. "I dreamt that someday I'll climb out of the water and onto that stuff that surrounds the pond, the knot water." "Stuff that surrounds the pond?" Cump muttered. "Preposterous." Ignoring him, Ozzie said, "These strange things," he wiggled the appendages, "will grow thicker and stronger. And I'll use them to raise myself up and move about the knot water by putting one in front of the other." "This dumb activity have a name?" Cump asked. "I don't know," Ozzie muttered. "Walking? Does that sound walking? I think it has a certain ring to it. If you ask me, it could catch on." "That's it? All this trouble just to do this walking?" "Oh, no. We'll jump, we'll kick balls, we'll dance, we'll play Ring Around the Rosie." "What does any of that mean?" Cump asked. I don't really know," Ozzie confessed. "Well, it all sounds stupid," Cump said. "And why would any sane fish want to do any of that?" To see, to learn, to explore, to understand, to become. I dreamt that we will change and change and change again. Some of us will soar high above the pond, and some of us will become mighty creatures 100 fishes high, and some— Go on, Cump said. "Some will become smart. They will know who they are and why they exist. They'll understand everything that is, and they will celebrate everything they understand." "Sounds unlikely," Cump said. "Maybe some of it is," Ozzie admitted, "and maybe not. But we'll never know unless we climb out of this pond." "Seems like a lot of bother with no guaranteed return. A smart fish will stay where they are and enjoy themselves. Now swim out of here, or walk, if that's what makes you happy. Me, I'm late for my nap." And that's the end of the story. But you may want to know a little of what happened next. That afternoon, Comfrumple was eaten. And within a couple of 100,000 years, a similar fate befell all the snortlefish, which is why nobody's ever heard of them. Ozzy never did get out of the pond, but later some of his descendants did. How much of the rest of his dream came true? That is yet to be seen. But we all keep on changing, and so may it always be.
And now is the time when we let our children and their adults go to class in person. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. So let us enjoy Go Now in peace. And if you'd like, have a hand over their heart as the children go to class. And now is the time in our service for the sharing of candle lighting. This is the time when the congregation is welcome to come forward and light candles as we gather in the front of the sanctuary. And you can do that during our time for our music for meditation. So we do this in the silence. And then we'll be followed by the sharing of joys and sorrows. You're welcome. Perhaps come over from one side of the congregation to the next. And I will start the candle lighting with lighting the candles at the chalice and bring the light down to the candles in front. And now, let us enter into our candle lighting and our music for meditation. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, yet again come into this moment of prayer with bodies so gathered, that we would share our hearts, offer our joys, that their beauty may be celebrated and expanded, to offer our heartbreak and our sorrow, our fear and despair, that hope may found again because sorrows are known. We gather simply because we want the confidence of our larger circle, growing and expanding with every one of us who wishes to be within its embrace. This is the time for the sharing of joys and sorrows, names and milestones in the life of the congregation. And we begin with congratulations. Carol Manny, our membership coordinator, currently is in Mexico. She is there to celebrate the marriage of her son, Christopher, and his new bride, Christopher and Kiara Martinez, who were married yesterday, February 12th, on the beach in Mexico. We offer our best wishes to the couple. We also offer our good wishes to Ev Maloney as she settles into her new room with a view at the Bueller home. And now, I want to invite us into a moment together. There is so much sorrow in the world. There is so much heaviness. There's also so much wonder and beauty. There is all that is our life. Let us take this moment to hold that together, to make room for all that is with us and within us, all that is around us, all that weighs us down, all that lightens our hearts. We carry all in the shared effort, ever expanding our circle of care. I invite you to join with me in a moment of quiet, taking a breath in and letting it out, and being present to this moment, this very time together. Our first reading is from Charles Darwin himself in his work, The Origin of the Species, first edition. There is a grandeur in this view of life with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one. And that whilst this planet has gone cycling according to the fixed laws of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wondrous, have been and are being evolved. The second reading is from Thomas Berry in 1978. A new creation story has evolved in the secular scientific community, the equivalent in modern times of the creation stories of antiquity. This creation story differs from the traditional Eurasian creation stories, much more than these differ from each other. It seems destined to become the universal story taught to every child who receives formal education in the modern form anywhere in the world. By means of this story, a new paradigm of the human is established, and with its support, we can awaken in the morning and know where we are. We can answer the questions of our children. We can interpret suffering, integrate knowledge, guide education. We can have a context in which life can function in a meaningful way. Here ends the readings. Please rise in body or spirit for our hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
So in anticipation of Valentine's Day tomorrow, and of the anniversary of Charles Darwin's birthday, which was on February 12th, I want to share, well, a love story. And it's a love story that changed the world. On January 29th, 1839, in a small English village chapel, a devoutly religious woman in a green silk dress married a man of science. Emma Wedgwood married her first cousin, Charles Darwin. And on that day, little did they realize what each would mean to each other and what their lives would mean for the relationship between science and religion. So in this ongoing relationship between science and religion, rather than trying to separate them or ignoring each other's existence, I think we're still in this conversation about seeing science and religion through the lens of life partners. Because after centuries of navigating this relationship between religion and science, we as a society still fight over the question of evolution and how to interpret within our deepest drives and highest motivations. Charles and Emma, I'll offer, did not merely tolerate each other. They didn't just kind of go to their separate corners from their existential belief perspectives. They were deeply committed to one another and to their family. And they sustained and championed one another, even when Charles's discoveries shook the foundations of their faith and their bond, and in the implications for the meaning of God. So I want to offer their story in this ongoing evolution of our own, in this navigation of how we understand and engage with our world. Now, my inspiration comes from the 2009 movie Creation, the true story of Charles Darwin. And the film dramatizes the family life of Darwin, including his relationship with Emma, his wife, and their grief over their daughter Annie, who died at age 10, and how their lives mingled with the development of his essential works. And the movie is based on the book Darwin, His Daughter, and Human Evolution by Darwin's great-great-grandson, Randall Keynes. And before I go further, I'll offer a spoiler alert. Yes, Darwin does publish The Origin of Species. Yeah, spoilers. There you go. Now, part of bringing in this sermon here in one of these faiths, Unitarian Universalism, that is rather friendly to Darwin as part of our understanding of science and nature and possibilities of revelation from both, this is also contributing to what's called Evolution Sunday and the Clergy Letter Writing Project. Michael Zimmerman, a biologist, academic, and administrator, first solicited letters from religious leaders in 2005 when a town in Wisconsin had a number of public school board members trying to add creationism to the science curriculum. And the overwhelming support that Zimmerman received inspired him to keep going with this project. It keeps going today, in fact. And the Clergy Letter Writing Project has the support from thousands of religious leaders, along with resources and an extensive library of sermons on this topic. Now, let me go into a little bit about Darwin and evolution, as it were. So Darwin had the fortune to collect and study specimens of wildlife from the Galapagos in 1832. Darwin thought that the birds he brought back were all different species. They were so much variety in their form, their beaks, that he thought they were all different species. Now, his colleague, and also an ornithologist, John Gould, demonstrated how they were, in fact, all finches to a one. It was one kind of bird that had adapted to the niches in the environment. And this discovery, that in fact these were all the same kind of bird, flew in the face, literally, of the profoundly held belief that God had created all things from the beginning of the world, and that nothing was going to change, that what God had created at the start was going to continue forever. And yet, here was Darwin with proof of the transmutation of species and the related implication that all things are changing and adapting all the time. So in his time, when religious faith tended to rule over science, here was proof that God's creation was in fact not fixed. This interconnection between religion and science and the impact of Darwin's theories are not news to us. Religion and science have been intermingled since the dawn of humanity. But over centuries, the earth and its myriad inhabitants have received as much, if not more, scrutiny than Scripture to help us human beings comprehend the workings of, some would call God, the Spirit, simply all that is in the world of our lives. And science has been deployed to prove every lens of faith included by humanity as well. We have countless creation stories. We have reverence for the natural world in the Christian Psalms, for examples. Early Christian mystics found nature as a source of spiritual enlightenment and a path to God. We are deeply intermingled with the world around us from our theological and spiritual and ritual experience. Now, religion and science and evolution led to radically new understandings of humans as animals, that morality itself is something that has evolved and was not bestowed by a divine hand, as well as a deeper and more complex role for spirituality experienced in nature. This was kind of the microcosm of the conflict in Charles and Emma's life, if you will, this encounter and the implications of all that was found in the science and the nature. Because after finishing his voyage on the Beagle in 1836, Darwin had already contained kernels of his thoughts and how much those would impact long-held views of God. And around the same time, he made the choice to marry. And when he approached his father about his cousin, Emma Wedgwood, the elder Darwin cautioned Charles against speaking of his views with his wife, and even cautioned Charles against Emma, because the women in Emma's family were known to be particularly religious and devout. But in spite of that warning, Charles and Emma began their relationship with a very frank conversation about their respective views, including his skepticism and her faith. And both were Unitarian, if you will, though they lived and moved within the context of the Church of England. Emma saw Charles's openness and genuine uncertainty about nature and God, and he saw her intelligence and her imagination as a woman who would be a fabulous match for creating a life together and for allowing him the freedom to pursue his study. So Emma's greatest spiritual challenge in this was actually not about so much this life, but what would happen after death. To the core of her being, Emma had faith in one God who would welcome every believer to heaven after death. 3 of their 10 children died over the years at young ages, and Emma found reassurance in the knowledge that her family would be united after death. But then there was this Charles, and in that she had little comfort for him. He kept finding further and further evidence that there was no divine hand, at least not in any proximity to the forces of life. And there was that long illness with their daughter Annie and her eventual death. And that pushed Charles further away from any God whatsoever. Emma continued to find comfort from the idea that while you're acting conscientiously and sincerely wishing and trying to learn the truth, you cannot be wrong. I'll say that again. While you are acting conscientiously and sincerely wishing and trying to learn the truth, you cannot be wrong. So his methodical doubt gave her room to have faith and a little bit of hope. Now, Charles, for his part, was really sensitive to his wife's concerns, and she inspired his very deliberate approach to the development of his thought. To be sure to ground his ideas through observation and in evidence. And in the biographical movie Creation, Charles talks with his daughter Annie about why he takes so long to publish on the origin of species. I mean, it took decades. And Charles's response to Annie is this: suppose the world stopped believing that God had any sort of plan for us, that nothing mattered, not love, trust, faith, or honor, only brute survival. And apart from anything else, it would break your mother's heart. But Darwin went on to publish On the Origin of Species in 1859. At his death, after 43 years of marriage, they affirmed their love for each other. He assured her he was not the least afraid of death, and for her to remember what a good wife you have been to me. I think this is one of the most powerful stories of relationship and partnership. And it offers an opportunity for us to think about our deep divisions today. One of the first things I learned from them is the importance of power and the power of respect and acceptance and understanding. Emma and Charles were able to remain not simply committed to their family and to each other, but truly devoted, because they could see the honesty and integrity each offered simply from themselves and to each other. They didn't avoid talking about belief as Darwin's father had advised. I think that would have been a very difficult path if they had chosen to have that separation between them. They engaged with the challenges in this search for truth and meaning. This is one of those central tenets in Unitarian Universalism. And here is Darwin, whose theories changed kind of everything about Earth and time and species and the non-benign character of nature, the role of God. All of these were transformed in these moments. Darwin's own crisis of faith was brought about by his observations and by the death of his daughter, Annie. And these are heartbreaking in his own merit, and then more so when combined with how much he wanted to assure Emma of his beliefs as well, and of her beliefs, of her beliefs. With regards to evolution, so many voices over the years have spoken about how God is everywhere as the world is moving and is not fixed. And yet we as humans remain deep in our struggles for development, still reconciling with evolution, but also with the nature of truth, as well as how we judge each other based on race, gender, physical ability, and so much more. I think one of the great lessons I learned from here is how it is essential in love and committed relationships is to have that desire to grow and to become the best they can be, to become that the other, whatever your relationship is, that the other would have a chance to become the best that they can be. And Emma was able to do this for him in relation to his work. In the movie, there is this dramatic moment when Charles turns over his draft of On the Origin of Species and gives it to Emma and leaves it to her whether it should be published or whether it should be burned. I mean, dramatic movie moment, should it be burned? Now, I have yet to find an account of that exact moment in any sources, but he did ask her to review his whole manuscript before he published it, including the part that removes God from any part of science. And she did not ask him to remove that argument. In fact, she sat there and helped strengthen his case. She was one of his best editors and advocates and pushed him to do this well. I think something else to be learned is the need to be so very clear about who we are and what we value. What is actually not negotiable and what has the possibility for change? What can we live with? What would make a situation okay? There's a caution about the assumptions made when teaching evolution, that it must be accompanied by the scientific method, and students permitted to have their own freedom of exploration when exploring all of the information. Or that science is no different than any of the dogmas many of us rail against. We must continue to offer that platform and that trust in that process of science itself. And realize that it can help us to understand the range of perspectives and opinions. Not every opinion has equal merit, but it serves in our relationships with each other to be willing to learn and listen and be curious. And no surprise, that curiosity may not necessarily lead to peace, because we will still be deeply in conflict and disagreeing. This isn't a remedy an easy solution for avoiding disagreements and deep divisions over philosophy and religion and science itself. But to be willing to live in conflict. I think some of what we've been seeing in local efforts to restrict access to books or so on, in censorship in communities across the country, is coming from the approach that there is an identity-based, entrenched, all or nothing, winner or loser kind of frame. And it's so difficult to try to remain curious when encountering such frames, this oppositional relationship, that there is no either or, if you will. Martin Marty of the University of Chicago Divinity School points out that creationist fundamentalism did not simply disappear after an apparent loss at the Scopes monkey trial, that creationist fundamentalism simply went underground in 1925. And, for example, the Arkansas School Board decisions in 1980 simply brought the creationists back out into the open. It's far better to know that the conflict is there rather than believing it is not. I think any relationship is better for that understanding. It's a sign of emotional development that we are able to hold contradictory, conflicting views even in our population at the same time without trying to eliminate or resolve one or the other prematurely. The Darwins were able to do this in their relationship. In our society, we need to figure out a path back towards that as well. And in case you're wondering, acting superior to someone who has yet to have this ability in the way of balancing multiple conflicting opinions all at once isn't necessarily any better. As a society, we're becoming more articulate about the intersection between science and religion and the nature of God in a world of constant change. And as I've been researching this, I'm finding it intriguing to note where there are places of change. And one of them is, in fact, in some of our Christian, the evangelical Christian world. Because in a theology, one of those theologies can be very much based on, really making use of this life and this earth, because human beings, if we have the toys, we can use them. We don't have to necessarily care about what happens afterward because we're really concerned about what happens after death. The theology that truly just focuses on what happens after death, that focuses more on salvation than anything else, can lead to an earth that is not made fair. But what I find intriguing is how there is a growing environmental movement amongst Christian evangelicals. As it says in Creation Care magazine from 2006, we all need to be reconnected to nature for the renewal of our minds and the future of conservation. There's a group called the Evangelical Environmental Network, and its work is to educate, inspire, and mobilize Christians in their effort for the care of God's creation, to be faithful stewards of God's provision, and to advocate for actions and policies that honor God and protect the environment. And their work is entirely grounded in Bible teachings and the responsibility of God's people to tend the garden, as it will, and a desire to be faithful to Jesus Christ and follow him. And as is indicated on their website quite clearly, they don't hold with nature worship or pantheism, which are two elements of how a lot of Unitarian Universalists show up. However, they do advocate for renewable energy, preserving public lands as resources for healthy ecosystems, and keeping public lands free from development. And they also advocate teaching children to be good stewards of the earth as well. So simply one example there, I find there's a lot of common ground. There are things that we could work on together. So, on that winter day in 1839, I don't think anybody would have guessed the future of Charles and Emma Darwin. They were profoundly engaged with the meaning of life and of their lives, and how to be faithful and true and dedicated to this search for truth and meaning. How to live in a beloved community on earth, and how to care for each other in all ways. We have so much more to learn from evolution and to witness where it may take us. We are still living in the mystery and wonder of this existence as we navigate our conflicts, as we navigate different opinions, as we continue to navigate that relationship between science and nature and all that is. Let us go forth, being open to discovery, as Charles was, being open to relationship, as Charles and Emma were, that we may go forth and do well with creating our own beloved community on this earth. Amen. Our closing hymn, I want to invite you in Rise, Body or Spirit. Our closing hymn is a new production that we've received from the congregation in Grafton and Upton, Massachusetts. Good people sharing all wonderful resources with us. This is from Iris Dement, Let the Mystery Be. Please rise in body or spirit.
Everybody's wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say once gone, you're gone forever, and some say you're gonna come back. Some say you'll rest in the arms of the Savior with the sinful ways you lack. Some say that they're coming back in the garden, bunching carrots and little sweet peas. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say they're going to a place called glory, and I ain't saying it ain't a fact. But I've heard that I'm on the road to purgatory, and I don't like the sound of that. I believe in love and I live my life accordingly. So I choose to let the mystery be. Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. So I think I'll let the mystery be. I think I'll just let the mystery be.
The words with which we extinguish our chalice this morning are called We Keep Its Light in Our Hearts by Maddie Cervantes. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls of the world we live in until we are together again.
I send you out now to share yourself with the world. May its promise and complexity set your mind ablaze. May you hold fast to what your life has taught you. May you question everything. And when you have changed the world and the world has changed you, may you return again to this place and share what you have learned with us. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.